This is Breaking the 180, the podcast where we're keeping track of everything going on in the cinema and media world. And this is yet another episode of Do We Recommend?
Episode 10.
Exactly. I'm Elsie Renhefo.
And I'm Sebastian Carrasco. I know that's how excited we are that I cut him off as he was trying to introduce himself.
It's fine. We've done so many of these that it's okay to change it up a little bit with the intro, especially because we are dealing with a subject of Freudian slips. Today we're going to be talking about a nice little movie that caught us by surprise. Freud's Last Session.
Professor Lewis.
Dr. Freud.
I've given you up for lost. Yoffe is my personal assistant.
Really?
Well, if a patient is calm, Yoffe always stretches out at my feet. But if a patient is agitated, Yoffe stands at my side.
What should I make of his running away at the sight of me?
Well, he's also a fanatic about punctuality.
We walked into this one absolutely cold at a screening over at the Academy Theater in Hollywood a couple of nights ago. Mostly attended by SAG members who of course, have just ratified their new contracts, so they're no longer on strike. And I admit I had not even seen the trailer for this movie when we walked in. I just knew it was about Freud, and I knew Anthony Hopkins was playing the iconic father of modern psychiatry.
Sigmund Freud. Analyze this.
And ironically enough, because how YouTube seems to make itself worse over time, the unskippable ads are getting out of control. But for whatever reason, that day I started getting ads for this movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this kind of looks interesting. And yeah, it was basically a cold call for both of us. We got invited. And now normally a movie like this, we would probably just leave it for an Instagram Live.
Yeah.
That's normally what we would do. However.
Yeah, it became quite the fun screening, not just because the movie was good. I'll say that off the bat. It's a good movie, but for other reasons.
Oh, yes. And we will get into one of the best Q&As I've ever seen, and not necessarily because of the insights into the movie, but also it was a surprisingly interesting movie. I don't think it's going to end up on any best of the year lists, but in terms of visually, it was a surprisingly rich film. Performance-wise, very strong, but also how it played with what we say versus how we act.
Yes.
How we try and understand almost unknowable concepts versus how we try and make our way through life, knowing that we'll never fully know, but using the knowledge we've gained along the way to hopefully help us better ourselves.
Yeah, it's a really good drama about essentially not really a battle, but a true debate of wills and world views. To quickly summarize, it takes place during World War II. Well, during the beginning stages of World War II.
The very beginnings, yes.
So Hitler's about to invade Poland, and Sigmund Freud is already nearing the end. It's very much his twilight years. So he receives a guest, Freud, played by Anthony Hopkins, then receives a guest played by Matthew Goode, who turns out to be the famous writer and Christian apologist C.S. Lewis, who's also, if Freud is at the twilight, we're meeting Lewis kind of at the really the beginning of his fame. He still hasn't written the Chronicles of Narnia. His popularity right now stems in the world of the movie from a satire he wrote based on The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. And so they just kind of spend an afternoon together just discussing their views. Freud, of course, is a stern rationalist who refuses to believe in the existence of God or some kind of deity, right, that runs everything. Whereas C.S. Lewis, I would say in a non-fundamentalist way, does believe in the existence of God and in some kind of higher order or higher power that then fuels the, let's say, like the moral engine of life. And so these two just start debating during the afternoon as Freud deals with cancer. And then on the side, we get snippets of Freud's daughter, who is wonderfully played by an actress we both really, really, really admire, Liv Lisa Fries, who is best known to some of you, we imagine, for her role in the excellent, excellent Netflix series Babylon Berlin.
One of the greatest of all time.
Netflix.
Where's that next
We're
season?
season 4. Come on already. I think it already aired in Germany.
I'm
so
sure it
come
did.
on, guys. And as the film progresses, it really is about the dialogue and the energy of the movie.
But interestingly enough, yes, it's about, and as Freud says, it's as much about what's said versus what's not.
Yeah.
I think this is the type of film that I found more interesting than its initial premise because a lot of the character development actually comes from not the battle of sharp wits, but those periods in between when the characters are helping each other or processing information or looking around a room.
Yeah.
Where the characters do begin to develop. It's this very interesting form of development that honestly I haven't seen so much in most films because it's a very nuanced dynamic.
Yeah, because
it's either all through action or all through dialogue, and this is something in between.
Yeah, because what's so nice about it is that it's also not a polemic, right? Like the movie isn't meant to say, well, Freud's right, C.S. Lewis is crazy, or C.S. Lewis is right, Freud is nuts. It's more about how do these two men, these two established intellects, face life and the world with their particular, I would say with their particular forms of faith, right? Because Freud is so devoted to science and rationalism that in a way, I mean, that's his belief system, if you want to call it that.
Well, it also becomes, ironically enough, a bit irrational,
Yes.
his devotion to rationality.
Yes, both guys have their points. That's what's nice about the movie, that the movie doesn't dismiss either one. Obviously, because they're both obviously intellectual powerhouses. So they both, in a sense, by the end of the movie, learn a little something from each other. And I think that, that goes to what you were saying about how it's more about the things unsaid. Freud sticks to his stern rationalism, we learn throughout the movie, because he also harbors his own doubts and fears about, let's say, his relationship with his daughter because of the way his daughter's life has developed. And he knows it has a lot to do with probably his failings as a father, with his own faults that he readily admits he has because he's a rationalist.
Also the death of his oldest daughter and his grandson, not spoiling too much here. But
Plus, I mean, if you know about Freud.
But another interesting point with C.S. Lewis, not only was his novel very famous and well regarded, but he'd also done BBC broadcasts
Yes.
that were kind of giving comfort to the nation in a world on the precipice.
Yes.
And I found what was interesting because the moment they started getting into C.S. Lewis's Christian apologist views, I was starting to think, oh my God, please don't let this become a backdoor Christian propaganda movie. I generally got concerned because a lot of films do that.
It's not Sound of Freedom. It's not. It's not the same
or
production company.
other movies like C.S. Lewis, The Most Reluctant Convert, directed by Norman Stone, or God's Not Dead, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Oh yeah.
But-
I mean, to be fair, those are made specifically by like Christian studios
Yeah.
with agendas. Yeah.
But other films can still do that. What I liked and what Freud confronts C.S. Lewis about and what he kind of admits is he doesn't necessarily have a specific or necessarily rational reason for having this belief, but just that it's important for him and it's important for a lot of people. And if it helps people make sense of other things in the world, then that's just as helpful as Freud breaking down people's dreams and psychoanalysis and all this other stuff.
Yeah, because
It's different, but it can be just as helpful.
Well, yeah, there's that wonderful moment when they're by the stairway where, and this happens throughout the movie, where both men also admit they don't know everything, right? And there's that great line early in the film where Freud and his daughter discuss the classic concept of madness, right? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, and that a sign of sanity is the ability to change your mind. And later, there's that wonderful scene by the stairway where C.S. Lewis, Freud challenges C.S. Lewis with this question about, if God is so loving, if God is so great, why does he allow evil in the world? Why, especially in the period they're living in, why is he allowing Hitler to exist? Why is he allowing World War II to start? And C.S. Lewis very rationally just says, I don't know. He says, I don't know. Maybe God is not all good. Maybe God also has flaws. I don't know. So now, of course, that might sound a bit not blasphemous, but extreme to the to a fundamentalist, but it speaks to Lewis, to the depth of Lewis's own thinking. So you have those nice moments. So yeah, and also I really enjoyed that scene where they have to run to a bomb shelter during a potential air raid, and you see that Lewis, for all his faith, he's still terrified, right? Because he fought in World War I. So he's been left with this PTSD, this trauma that is unshakable, and so he cowers almost like a child during a bombing raid, and Freud is the one that kind of has to smack him into just staying calm and into staying focused.
It also leads into Freud's own view of death.
Yeah.
Freud wants to meet death on his own terms.
Yeah.
Which you then see in if you know about Freud's life, obviously you know how he died,
yeah.
but then with the title card at the end. Now, one other thing that I did not know about the film at all was, I mentioned earlier, its dynamic look, its visual style that was very rich. D.P. Ben Smitherd, who's also worked on films such as Blinded by the Light, The Father, which Hopkins won an Oscar for.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic movie.
My Week with Marilyn. Another adaptation of King Lear with Hopkins himself, but also that they include a lot of flashbacks, and not just like cheap flashbacks. There's like a World War I trench scene. There are a lot of very dynamic flashbacks that know how to use a very constrained budget well. This movie, I don't know if it was just distributed or co-financed by Sony Pictures Classics, but this is a studio that tends to have a much lower budget than even films like A24, which have become quite prestige now and really...
Oh, they're doing a bit of everything now. Yeah, I mean, but the connecting factor with all those movies you just listed is they are also British productions. And the English just know so well how to do these dramas that crackle. It's almost part of just a British tradition of making dramas that are rich in terms of content, but also elegance of the visuals. And yeah, this movie does that so well. This could have easily been shot very flat, like a stage play on film or something.
Just do the shot, reverse shot,
Yeah.
camera is static. And this is the complete opposite. I mean, it actually had some very beautiful transitions. One of my favorites was when it's right when C.S. Lewis enters the home and Freud, played by Hopkins, goes out to his garden, and it transitions to a scene when he's receiving an award.
Oh yes, that's a wonderful scene, and it then leads to a more haunting personal aspect of that memory. But yeah, it's just so well done. Where the drama, it feels like it feels alive basically from beginning to end. It's not even an overly dense film. If you had never read a single work of Freud's, or if you've never read anything by C.S. Lewis or know who the guy is, you could still walk in and be intrigued and be pulled in by their conversation, because the dialogue gives you just enough of who they are and what their reputations are and what their worldviews are.
Well, so Hopkins, I mean, talk about a guy. I mean, how old is he now? 86 or something?
Yeah, it's around there. Yeah, I mean,
He brings that cheekiness
yeah.
to Freud, right? It's not, despite a man who's about to die, he still has that fire in him.
Yeah, because both actors do such a great job in evoking these personalities, right? Hopkins plays Freud like a man that's so, let's say, so confident in his ideas and his rationalism that he just applies that to everything in life. And Matthew Goode is great as this equally brilliant thinker, but who comes from, the more, I guess you could say,
Well, he came from a very intellectual elite. I mean, he mentions that he's in a circle of friends with J.R.R. Tolkien.
Right. But the difference is he's also, because he's a man of faith, it's funny, his let's say his Protestant character is challenged by Freud's, I don't know what the right word is, not libertine, but just his. But I guess you could say that Freud is just a little more libertine than Lewis, because he's not held back by any kind of, let's say, religious reservations about things, whereas Lewis gets very uncomfortable when the topic of homosexuality comes up, right? Because as much of a, let's say, of an open person that he is, he's still constrained by these religious modes of thought, right? Which, in his view, homosexuality is immoral.
Well, even Freud. Remember Freud? It's like, oh, homosexuality, go for it. But lesbianism, I don't know about that.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's great. That's the great thing about the screenplay, because it shows that neither one of them, at the end of the day, can say, well, I'm 100% right and you're 100%.
Their rational fears are projected into their own,
yes,
I would say, relatively staunch belief systems.
And, it just reminded me of debates and why the movie's so good. It taps into debates going on now, right? I mean, you have thinkers, or you have commentators like, Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins, who clash. They're so fervent about dismissing any kind of theological or religious belief system, while also stepping into really funny intellectual puddles, right, when discussing politics, current events, what's going on now in the Middle East, etc. And they continuously clash with intellectuals like, Chris Hedges, who are more tolerant towards, and Chomsky even, who are more tolerant towards religious groups and belief systems, in these interesting ways. And of course, Chomsky, for example, it reminded me of how Noam Chomsky's he's not religious, but when they've asked him about religion, he says, "Look, I'm not going to condemn someone who believes in Jesus, and because of that, they go try to open a shelter in Peru or Colombia or try to feed the poor." Whereas then you have the other extreme where, you had someone like the late Christopher Hitchens who was just like, no, I mean, just religion in general, just like fucks up the world. Like everything bad stems from religious belief. So you still have these interesting debates going on today that you see reflected in the movie in very good ways. It's a nice movie. Like, if you want to go see something intellectually stimulating that's well crafted, yeah, go check it out.
Totally. And one thing that made me appreciate the movie even more, and that's before the Q&A, which we're gonna talk into that. I actually thought the last 15 minutes were frankly amazing.
Yeah.
Almost no dialogue, but the way the stories wrap up for Freud, his daughter, and even Matthew Goode, it's what we've talked about in really great stories. Yeah. The idea of a resolution for a chapter is not necessarily a permanent resolution.
Yeah. Life
Anna
goes on.
Freud, she's lesbian, and through some of the flashbacks, you can tell that Freud is not comfortable with this. There's a sore spot there. In fact, Anna Freud's relationship with the Freud is a very bizarre dynamic. She herself is a respective psychoanalyst who deals with child development. And her own peers say, you understand that the fact you're dropping your third lecture at your dad's whim, there's something going on there.
What is it called? Detachment. I mean, no. Attachment. It's some kind. Sorry, psych majors, if I'm garbling the language, but it's a kind of basically it's a condition that stems from. It's like some kind of attachment disorder. That might even be what it's called, attachment disorder. Yeah, they say it in the movie. I'm trying to remember.
And how that resolves, but also with C.S. Lewis, played by Matthew Goode. He's on a train. Freud has given him a book as a gift, and he's on this train, and the lights start to flicker, which begins to trigger something. But the way he's starting to think about how to move on from this, his future, it's kind of left a little bit ambiguous, but in the way that, like, I know there's a path forward for me, but I don't have all the tracks laid down. It's just really great. I was genuinely surprised at how strong the ending was, which would not have worked without the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's a beautiful ending, and I like how it also connects musically. They start playing Dvorak's Nocturne, but what's nice is, it's playing on the BBC radio station that Freud is tuning into, whereas before he discusses music with C.S. Lewis, and he talks about how he doesn't like the way music almost forces you to feel religious feelings, right? It's almost like when you listen to a mass or a choir, it's manipulating your emotions. And C.S. Lewis counters that. On the contrary, for him, it heightens those emotions. And it's almost like Freud just fears, he kind of fears listening to something or tapping into something that reveals a hidden part of himself. Or a yearning in him that he doesn't want to admit. You don't have to be a theist to wish you could believe in God, right? That's a common statement a lot of atheists make, that they wish that they could believe in some kind of higher power. And then, at that final scene in the film, he turns on the radio and this piece of music comes on. And Freud just is kind of enjoying it, almost as if he's just unafraid now to kind of just enjoy the music for the sensations that it produces. And it's almost like, okay, neither man has completely convinced the other of his worldview, but they've helped each other grow just a little bit by having that discussion.
Well, the idea that there's a chance. I think that's what I was trying to get at. There's
Yeah.
a chance that they could change. They might not, but the fact they're even willing, not that they will change, like I just said, but the fact that there's a seed that they could, that perhaps they might look past their own biases. I mean, when Anna Freud and her girlfriend confront him, I thought, oh, we're going to get a whole speech. But it does this really great thing where there's a single shot of him, it cuts to a two shot of them, like they're about to speak, and they hold hands. You see a close-up of them holding hands. It cuts to Freud. He acknowledges it, and it cuts.
Yeah, no, it's so wonderfully done. Again, with that British elegance that these dramas carry. What was also elegant in another way was the Q&A that followed.
Yes. Oh yes.
Jeez,
and this is part of the reason we wanted to cover this as a podcast, because it made the whole experience better. I mean, if it wouldn't have saved a bad movie, but the fact it was quite a nice, elegant movie. And then this British actor comes out playing C.S. Lewis, and for lack of a better word, in fact, you know what? I'm just going to quote Stanley Tucci in Transformers 5, The Last Night. He was sozzled.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Matthew Goode stepped out. He was being interviewed by a Variety editor who looked... I mean, I just felt bad for her because there were moments where she looked like a deer with caught in the headlights, because let's just say Matthew Goode showed up quite obviously tired from probably having flown straight through from London to LA, and I don't know. I'm speculating. We don't have any inside info on this, but I'm guessing he was given a lot of complimentary beverages
perhaps
during his stay, which he clearly indulged in, because what followed was the most entertaining.
We got the Roots to play in this thing, and I love the Roots. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, and I didn't really have the balls to talk to Questlove. He's just a bit of a hero, really. And then, but he decided that he would play, he would DJ our rap party.
I say this in a charming way, rambling a discussion on everything from, who was it that cracked his back?
How Tony Collette and some mariachis broke 3 of his ribs and punctured his lungs.
So I have that fight with the mariachi band, and I've shot my stuff, and I'm on a cold, hard floor, tiled floor, like that's what I am. And so there's still the action going on, but I'm this guy. I'm down here. And all I'm thinking about is, steak and chips in a second, and a bottle of red wine, quick sleep, and then I'm in a plane, and I'm going home to Crimbo. Brilliant. But Tony, who's never been involved in this fucking fight that we've had, is bored. Tony got bored. And the mariachi band got bored too. And they decide to pick her up. Or it happened, I don't know how it happened. They pick her up, and then they accidentally drop her. But your man down there, i.e. me, has absolutely no fucking idea that this is going on, and certainly has no sense of inertia. And so she lands on me, and I'm like, oh, and I hear a crack, and I'm like, oh, fuck my ass, oh my God.
and then
and someone who drank champagne despite having a gluten intolerance or something like that.
Yeah, and then he needed help from the audience to figure out what, to remember the word meditation, and
what's the fucking word? If you, like, you know, people who...
Sense memory?
Yeah, they're nearly there.
Manifest?
Meditate. Oh, God. Clearly something I don't do enough of.
And he's doing this while laying down on the floor, taking his jacket off, and looking like he's about to do a
He hits the vape
TED.
really quickly.
Oh yeah, that's right. He asked if he could vape.
No, he didn't ask. He said, my producers told me not to do this, but I'm so tired. Like, it's 5 a.m. in London. So it's so funny. Everyone knows what he's doing, but I guess because of the British sensibility, he still turns around and, like, puts his head in his jacket and hits the vape.
Hey, you know what? Let me hit that.
It's like...
Now, of course, which is funny because I think he should have known that if you're in a room with SAG people, you know, hey, we love you SAG guys, but I mean, we all know what SAG members have been up to since the dawn of acting as an art form. So I don't think anyone cared that he wanted a vape. He could have thrown a Roman orgy in that theater. I think if he wanted to. But
I mean, look,
yeah.
First of all, an absolute legend. Because what's funny, he's so entertaining as a storyteller.
Yes.
But then in between the crazy stories, he also brings some insight into actually making the movie.
He
and
wasn't dull. Yeah, that's the
and
thing.
then goes back to the crazy stories. I mean, the broken rib story was 15 minutes long.
Oh yeah, but then he gets into tracking down remaining audio of C.S. Lewis and having to grapple with the fact that that C.S. Lewis had a very deep voice like that, you know, which is not Matthew Goode's voice, and so he had to figure out
He said no one would take me seriously.
Yeah.
Actually, he said they would laugh at me. But also talking about how, yes, this is historical fiction, but it's also speculative.
Yes.
Because in Freud's guest book, it just says an Oxford Dawn visited. So the screenwriter and director, so it was directed by Matt Brown and co-written by Matt Brown and Mark St. Germain, that they thought, okay, well, this could have been any number of people, but because of what we know about C.S. Lewis, let's create this scenario. We don't know if this ever happened.
It's plausible. It's like the stories of Tristan Tzara playing chess with Lenin, you know, before the Russian Revolution. It's one of those where it's like, it might have, it could have happened. It's very plausible. Why not? It's more than plausible. And I'll quickly add a funny little detail, because Goode went on quite a rant, a fun rant recommending this movie. A nice bit of irony here is that Anthony Hopkins once played C.S. Lewis in an excellent 1990s drama called Shadowlands, which is about Lewis in his twilight years falling in love with a single mother who helps him finally, you know, really open up in ways that he just hadn't for years. And it's one of Hopkins' best performances. It's a wonderful movie, as Goode reminded us during the Q&A in very colorful fashion.
And he took shots at method acting.
Yes.
I mean, absolute legend. In fact, in a funny twist of fate, the ghost of Freud, not that he would have believed in that, would have been quite proud. He's like, yes, this is
very good.
very good. It's all because of some sexual thing, of course.
Exactly.
But
yeah, no, Freud
would have been gleefully entertained.
Yeah, but yeah, Freud would have had a great time with that Q&A. He would have said, you know, that the yes, it is the id manifesting itself or something. You know? It would have been great.
But you know, he also told a story about how they were supposed to shoot a scene in the crypt of a church, and as anyone knows, when you're in production, shit happens.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, no, it's not happening. And he's like, what's going on? Why? This is the scene when, you know, my PTSD manifests itself. And the director apparently turns to him and says, Anthony Hopkins is 86. We're not going to kill this guy trying to get down to the crypt.
Yeah. I mean, and we're grateful it's Hopkins because he's so good as Freud. Freud, I mean, he's been played before by other wonderful actors.
Well, Soderbergh directed a film, right?
Did he do? No. Cronenberg.
Cronenberg.
David
Oh my
Cronenberg.
God.
Yeah. He did a Dangerous Method.
It does feel like a Soderbergh movie, though.
A little bit, yeah. Viggo Mortensen plays Freud. It was during that period where, well, no, I guess it's still going on. Cronenberg really just has been attached to Viggo since History of Violence. I mean, and of course they did Crimes of the Future last year, so they're still working together. And so Dangerous Method, Viggo Mortensen plays Freud. Michael Fassbender's Carl Jung. And it's about their this triangle, this weird kind of intellectual, sexual triangle they have going on with an aspiring psychologist played by Keira Knightley, who comes up with her own amazing theories. And then that was not a bad film. I liked it quite a bit. Funny enough, I actually screened it with your dad one night, and he did not like it at all. But so we had a funny disagreement on that movie. But that one came out, and I'm sure there's been other good Freud films. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote a screenplay about Freud. I just remembered he wrote like an unfilmed screenplay about the life of Freud. So yeah, Freud's been quite and of course, Dr. Fraser Crane dressed up as Freud for Halloween in a great episode of Frasier. So Freud has always been pretty good as a source of inspiration for lots of media. But I think Hopkins is one of the best Freuds that we'll probably get because he's so full of life, but at the same time he's so full of inner complexities and pains and it's I just go see it. Go see the movie.
Definitely. And one funny note, the only glaring problem in the movie, and it stood out so badly. So in Freud's office, he has all these statues of different deities.
Oh, right.
And C.S. Lewis is walking around the room and points out one. It was a Christian deity. Yep. I think the saint of like beggars and something, and the mad. Except when they do the close-up insert, it's a still photo that they did like the Ken Burns effect on.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I did not notice that. Wow.
It was so off because everything else looked so good. So my question is, really, you guys like didn't have like a B unit just come in for 15 seconds?
Are you sure it was just a still photo?
It was a still photo, 100%.
Huh.
So if anyone goes and sees this movie, this is how I know anyone is listening. If anyone sees it and gets to that point, write a comment below.
Yes.
And tell me I'm either right or I'm crazy.
Yeah, 'cause, wow, I did not notice it was a still photo. Really? That one shot? It wasn't just like it was a still photo.
I believe it was a still photo because it.
I have to see it again, huh? That's interesting. I guess when it streams, I'll pause that moment. Wow, interesting.
And another fun fact: Anthony Hopkins wrote a waltz.
Oh, that's right. Oh, which Goode mentioned during the Q&A as well that, Tony Hopkins is apparently just a really good piano player and wrote some music for the film, which, we noticed, right, in the end credits that it said additional music by Anthony Hopkins. But wow, I mean, what a talent. And at this age, to still be going hard like that, where he delivers a very Hopkins performance, but he even throws in some extra melodies.
It's true. And what I appreciate about Hopkins, he can't do accents, and I like that everyone just has accepted that. So he sounds exactly like Van Helsing from Coppola's Dracula, and I'm like, oh, you crazy old man, I love this.
I don't know, although I don't know. Maybe it's just because he's in his twilight years, but back in the day, I mean, if you watch him in Nixon, he nails it. You would not know he's a Brit in that movie. I mean, he's got the accent down of a straight up Whittier, California, crazy ass politician. he's very good in that. I don't know. Maybe it's just now that he's comfortable enough where he's like, I mean, I'm Anthony Hopkins. Like, do I have to make an accent? Like, who cares? Like,
I'll put a little tinge of it.
yeah, like, come on. At this point in life, I could die on set. Like, who's gonna call me out on this?
Who's gonna stop me?
Who's gonna stop me? I'm Anthony Hopkins. But yeah, Freud's Last Session, wonderful film, just an excellent drama all around. Nice little surprise for the season. It's a nice one. It's going to open limited in December, but it's going to go a little wider next month in January. So it's a good one if you want to get away from all the awards craziness, or if you already saw Killers of the Flower Moon, the Poor Things, and
Oppenheimer,
and all the other movies that are creating such a chatter right now. It's a good one to check out at your local art house theater. Do a little double feature between this one and Boy and the Heron, or the new Godzilla. Do a little. Ease it out, right?
Which we will be checking out this weekend. We won't tell you which one.
Exactly.
But you'll definitely hear from us and our.
But it'll
good
be
friend.
Japanese.
It will be Japanese.
It will be Japanese.
So you'll probably see our good friend and producer Jose
Gutierrez. Yes.
Yeah. So that's what we got for this episode. It's been a fun one.
Check it
heat.
out.
Look, it's that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah,
I was about to
out.
say check out this movie,
Check
but
out this-
you already
yeah.
beat me to the punch.
Check out our special episode of Michael Mann's Heat. It's our big episode in the Chronicles of Man.
We have one big one left, and
We're
we
not
are
done. Yeah, there's still more coming
we're
up.
gearing up. We are revving our engines for Ferrari.
In fact, we're gonna watch it right now after this recording.
Indeed, we are. But yeah, we got a lot of good stuff. I know we're already in December. It's getting close to the hardcore holiday season, but we still have some tricks up our sleeve. So
10 well, I would say I tend to do a 10 best list at the end of the year, but let's just say we'll have our summary. We'll have our best of 2023 coming up, where we're going to talk about the movies that we like the most throughout the year. We'll include a couple of the big titles that everyone was talking about all year, but we're also going to revisit a couple of lesser known gems that we really, really think are underappreciated and deserve multiple viewings.
Absolutely. And pending, but there's a really good film channel called In Frame Out. I like to watch a lot of Scottish individual, and they do something called the alternative Oscars.
Yes.
So we've been floating around the idea of basically anything that hasn't been nominated for an Indie Spirit Award or is on the short list for the Oscars. So basically what we're saying is keep up to date with us on all our social medias. We always leave our links down below, and we'll catch you next time, everyone. Peace.
See you soon.
Oh, fuck my ass! Oh my god!
That was real sweet.